Get ready for another informative, educational, and inspirational story on one of the hottest podcasts in the world. Forget what your clock says and get comfortable. It's time for another edition of It's Prime Time Somewhere with your host, J.D. Williams. Now let's meet today's guest.
Well, hello everybody, and welcome again to another edition of It Is Prime Time Somewhere. And I am honored today to welcome in my guest, Mr. Shaun Banks. And welcome to the podcast, Shaun.
Hey, JD, thank you so much for having me.
Oh yeah, you better believe it. Well, we got a lot to cover today. I don't know you, and neither does my audience. And, that's the fun thing about this stuff is that I get to know people and they get to know people. And, we spent, 5 minutes before the show started, just kind of, some trivial housekeeping kind of stuff, okay? But I deliberately do not find out this information until we get started. But I start each of these exactly the same way, Shaun. Who in the heck is Shaun Banks? Who are you?
Well, JD, I am someone that ended up being in an industry that I never thought that I would be in and never had a desire to do it at all. I work with kids. I work with youth. I've been in youth development for over 20 years, and I originally couldn't stand kids. I hated kids. I had no passion to want to work with kids at all, and now I have a youth magazine that is going around the world motivating kids to go after their dream. I have a summer camp that we work with kids, exposing them to activities they normally wouldn't do during the school year, martial arts programs, youth conferences. I mean, anything that has to do with kids is what we do. And just the crazy thing about it is that I never, ever saw myself working with kids. But now this is what I do with my life.
Well, I saw that. They actually gave me some stuff here. I'm going to read this. A fun, humorous, and passionate guest. I'm an expert in my field who's looking to create entertaining and mutually beneficial episodes. But then you go on and you say, at first, I disliked working with kids. What caused your hatred of children?
Well, it's crazy. I mean, it's a great question. I mean, it was something where people would say, man, you should work with kids. And I said, I don't want to work with any stinking kids, man. I mean, it's like booger fingers, snotty noses, man. I mean, I didn't want anything to do with kids and working with kids. And, and as a young adult, I mean, it was like, I want to do something where I can make some money,
Right,
There's
right.
No money working with kids. So they're like, working with kids, like, who wants to do that? So that was kind of where it was. And so what would happen, actually, when I would do work at my church, is they would put me over in the youth ministry, and I was part of the protection team, and they would put me over in the youth ministry, and I would hate it. The kids would run up to me, and like I said, they'd have snotty noses, man, and the snot would get on your pants leg or something. I'd have to take my suit to the cleaners, and I just said, man, I don't want anything to do with this, and so that's kind of where it started.
That's really cool. The youth department thing, I get that. We were a part of a church when we lived up in the Dallas and Fort Worth area that had a really big children's department, and we took our grandkids back there every week. And you're right, all these little kids come running out of the thing, and they're all around you and all this kind of stuff. Well, I'm not a real big kids person myself. Just to let you know, I mean, I got grandkids. Yeah. I got 5 kids, and I got a bunch of grandkids and all that stuff. But I've never been a real, what you would call a kid kind of person.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. This is going to come as a shock to my podcast audience. They've never heard me say this on a podcast or on a radio. But my requirement for dealing with children, right up until we had grandchildren, okay, my requirement was that in order for me to have anything to do with them, they have to be walking good, talking good, and capable of going to the bathroom by themselves. That was a requirement. Yeah. If they did not meet that requirement, then JD was out. I kind of get where you are coming from there, but I do want to get into what caused the change. I mean, I know, for me it was grandchildren, okay, but What caused the change, Shaun? What was the transition?
Well, it was a couple things that happened. So when I was at my church, the guys would come to me and they'd say, look, we know you don't want to be over here in the youth ministry. Posted here. I want it to be posted somewhere else, maybe in a sanctuary or something. And they say, okay, but if these parents are concerned about whether or not their kids are going to be safe, we can't get the message out the way we need to. They're going to be distracted. And they said, when these parents see you there, they know that their kids are going to be safe. And so I said, okay, that gave me some understanding, but I still didn't want to do it. And so they just kept me there anyway. And so what really changed for me was I started to see the need in youth development, because as I was standing there, I'm seeing kids that were either disrespectful to their parents or kids that you could tell needed some confidence, right? Or they didn't have any focus. Or I started noticing that parents were having problems getting their kids to believe in themselves. And I started seeing all these problems, and I'm like, wow, like somebody needs to do something about this, right? And so I never thought I never thought that it was like, like you need to do something about it. And so I started out, the market tanked. I was in real estate at the time, and the market tanked. And a buddy of mine said, hey, look, man, we can start teaching self-defense to women and children. And so my mom had put me in martial arts as a kid. I grew up doing it. And I said, okay, well, that's the idea. So I either go do this, right, or find myself figuring out how to get a job somewhere, right? And so I started a self-defense program for women and children. And the funny thing about that, the really interesting and really powerful thing about that is when I was a kid, my aunt and cousin were murdered in a domestic violence situation. And at about 16, I said, one day I'm going to do something in their honor. And I never knew what that would be. I said it and kind of just let it go. And so, here it is, 20 years later. Well, at that time it was more, probably about 10 to 15 years later. And I started a self-defense program for women and children. And when it hit me, I said, okay, I'm going to do this in their honor, because maybe if they knew how to defend themselves or how to get away, maybe they would still be alive. And so I committed myself to teaching women and children how to defend themselves. And that's how it got started.
Okay. And that makes perfect sense. It also reminds me to have you please state your website name, because of the fact that I noticed on your website, visited it very, very briefly this morning, that you do have some pictures there of
yes,
some of the martial art classes. I assume that was your class anyway. So can you tell us what's the name of the website, and tell us a little bit about it and what people are going to find on that website?
The website is gosfb.com. Again, that's gosfb.com. And the website tells people about who I am, what I'm doing, about my mission to expand personal development for youth around the world. And on that site, they'll see, pictures of me teaching martial arts classes. They'll see pictures of me with some of the people I've worked with over my years doing it. They'll see pictures of me, speaking at different organizations. And they'll also see pictures of me actually, praying with youth and different things. They'll just see my body of work that I've been doing over the last 20 years.
Okay. Now, if I'm assuming that is the I Am Defense Institute part, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct.
Now that was formed in 2007, so it's been going. It's been going for quite a while. Are you finding good fulfillment with that, or are you seeing some positive things coming out of that part of your website?
Absolutely. The I Am Defense was the very first program that I started with working with kids. Right. And we still have it today. We still teach children martial arts. And because the martial arts is very, very, very good at teaching confidence and focus and discipline, and which is one of the things that kids need all over the world. Regardless of what it is that their dreams are, they got to have the confidence and focus and discipline. And so I've seen a great benefit in that. As a matter of fact, I Am Defense is what allowed me to not have to work a job when I started the business, and we've been doing it ever since.
Well, amen. And teaching kids how to defend themselves in this day and age, I think is an extremely important thing. We were blessed with receiving two of my grandchildren to live with us on a full-time basis. And
Oh, wow.
I'm going to tell you a real quick story about that, and then we'll move on quickly. My audience knows this, but you don't. And that is that we got these kids on one Sunday morning in March of 2020. I want you to think back to March of 2020. What happened in March of 2020? It was called the COVID-19 shutdown. So we got them on a Sunday. The nation and the world closed down on a Monday. We found out that we were school on a Tuesday, and then we relocated from the Dallas and Fort Worth Metroplex to beautiful East Texas, and we went from 2 million people around the Dallas and Fort Worth Metroplex to the city that we live in has a grand total of 3,000 people where everybody knows everybody else for good or bad.
Wow.
So anyway, that's just a short breakdown where you kind of know who you're talking to, okay? But my point on this was that when we were in the Dallas area, these kids could have used some of that self-defense stuff. Now out here, parents call each other and say, "Hey, Jimmy's picking on Shaun," and whatever, and that's the end of it.
Right.
But not in Dallas. In Dallas, you better know how to defend yourself. Now. I take it that you are an accomplished person in self-defense. Can you tell us a little bit about your study and how you got into it?
Absolutely. So I started studying when I was 6 years old. I'm from Seattle, Washington originally. Okay. And my mom put me in martial arts at the Boys and Girls Club. Taekwondo actually is where I started. And she put me there because she was a single mother. I was living in an impoverished neighborhood, and there was a lot of gang violence and drugs and things going on during that time, and she wanted to make sure that I was on the right path. And so she put me in a martial arts program, and from there I fell in love with martial arts. Just as most kids do, right? You want to be a Ninja Turtle or
right.
a Power Ranger or something. And it's cool till you realize that it takes time to do those kicks and those jumps like that. But I just fell in love with the art, and so I studied Taekwondo, and then I studied Hung Gar Kung Fu, which being in Seattle, there's a huge Asian culture there and a huge Chinatown. So I was able to find these different martial arts that I could study, and Tai Chi, and and then there's a big Japanese area. So then there's like ninjutsu, and there's all this stuff. And so as a kid, I really got into it. I never got into it to teach it though. I never thought that I would be teaching it. I got into it because I was really interested and loved the art. My favorite, a couple of them. So Bruce Lee is actually buried in Seattle. So it was like, it's like you feel real special because the master is buried in Seattle, Washington. And then I used to watch a lot of movies by Sho Kosugi, who is a Japanese actor. Did a lot of ninja movies. And so every year I want to be a martial artist or a ninja. So I just got into it. And so that was where it started. And then from there, I got into different forms of martial arts, Krav Maga, Hapkido, which I studied for over 10 years. And I just loved the arts. I never thought that I would be teaching them. And so I just consumed all this knowledge and learned to apply it just because I was interested in it. Right. I never did it to say, okay, look, I'm going to open up these programs. And, and from that, I saw a greater need, which opened up doors for other programs.
Okay. Well, you told me something I didn't know, and that was that Bruce Lee was buried up there. I had no idea about that.
Bruce Lee's buried in
Seattle. As a kid, I can remember watching some of the movies, and that kind of thing. And my best friend from the time I was in junior high, I think they call it middle school now, but anyway, from the time I was in junior high, he became a third-degree black belt. So he taught me.
All right.
He taught me a few things to defend myself, But now, one thing that you told me is that you didn't, you didn't envision yourself teaching this stuff, and I kind of appreciate that because I was into basketball. I was really good at basketball. Okay, and so if it hadn't, if not for injury, I can tell you this: I played against Magic Johnson. Okay, I mean, at one time. Okay, and we actually thought that we would be playing each other at a much higher level. Okay, so anyway, if not for injury, a whole nother life there. But the thing is that I know all about basketball. A lot of times I call what's going on TV, and I'm saying, you better call timeout right now, or you get this guy over here, you move this guy over there.
Right.
And the thing is that I could not see myself teaching or coaching because I'm too critical. Do you run into, did you have to go through that thing of, adjusting the way that you approach your teaching or your coaching of this particular sport or whatever? I don't know what the proper terminology is for it. But did you have to kind of adjust the way that you teach to be able to do it with children?
Absolutely. I mean, I had to adjust the way I taught as it pertained to kids, and just making sure that it was appropriate to the things that we were teaching, right? Just a level of, the level of violence, if you will, right? Just to make sure that it was something that was kid appropriate as far as defense. But one of the bigger things that I struggled with was the confidence to do it. Okay. I struggled with that because I initially had started with a buddy of mine. We had started a different martial arts program initially, and then he went into acting, and I was left with the option of, okay, either you're really going to start teaching this martial arts stuff on your own, or you're going to have to figure out how to keep the lights on for yourself. And so I had to step into that role of being an instructor at that level, and that was very hard for me. Were the kids going to learn it? I mean, I dealt with a lot of self-doubt. Am I good enough to teach this? I know it, but can I teach it to the kids? Right? I'm not as proficient to myself as a lot of other guys I know. Right? I'm not an MMA fighter. I don't want to be a competitive fighter. So, I just kind of felt like I didn't have some of those skill sets, and so it was a confidence thing. And so I just had to keep forcing myself to do it. And I started realizing that kids were learning, and I would get the feedback, and I just kept going forward in spite of the fear. Yeah.
So, and you didn't want to teach bullies. I mean, that kind of goes without saying, but it does need to be said that your job was not to make somebody a bully to go to school and beat up everybody else or something. It was all about self-protection, all about protecting themselves or their family members or their friends, something like that. And you're to be commended for that. That's good, solid work there. Now,
yes, sir.
We've got some other stuff to go over. I mean, this is only one aspect of you, but and that is something that is pretty cool because most people focus in on just one thing and they get really good at just one thing. Like me, I'm good at talking. I mean, I can do that on a very number of different platforms and feel pretty comfortable with it. But you get me into something else, and teaching kids how to play basketball. Oh no, they do not want Coach JD. Coach JD would be their worst enemy. I mean, he would be horrible for them to deal with. Okay, now another area here that I want to discuss with you is Camp Warrior King. And again, this is also on the website. And once again, please give us that website address, and then tell us about this particular aspect.
Absolutely. So it's golsfb.com, and my body of work is there. Camp Warrior King. So Camp Warrior King. When I was teaching martial arts, I noticed there was a couple things going on. Their kids needed more personal development. They needed more exposure to activities. A lot of the kids hadn't been out of their neighborhood. They hadn't been, these kids hadn't gone fishing. They hadn't learned how to hunt. They hadn't, they just hadn't been exposed to anything. And a lot of what I've learned is that, exposure is critical to developing a child. And there was also some needs myself, right? I was teaching at a lot of schools, and during the summertime, the schools would close. And so then I had to figure out, well, how do I make it from, May until August?
Right.
And so, someone said, well, why don't you open up a camp? And I'm like, heck no, I don't want to open up a camp. I don't even want to be working with these stinking kids. Now you want me to do something else. I was like, man, let me do something else, man. I don't want to do this. But they said, man, you should try it. And so the parents said, hey, look, will you do a spring camp for us for a week? And I said, sure, I'll do spring break. That's just 5 days because we don't do the weekends. And, we'll be fine. So at the end of the 5 days, the parents said, that was amazing. Can you do something for the whole summer? Well, first they said, can you do a summer camp? I said, yeah, I'll do one for a week. They said, we don't want anything for a week. We need somewhere where our kids could be for a whole summer. And man, I broke into a cold sweat. I probably fell out right then. I said, man, you need to tell me you want me to work with kids for like 10 weeks at a time. And they say, yeah. And so that's what we did. And we opened up Camp Warrior King. And Camp Warrior King celebrates its 10th year this summer. And Camp Warrior King is all about exposing kids to extracurricular activities that normally wouldn't experience during the school year. And JD, we have a ball, man. We take them hiking, we take them fishing, we teach them how to trap shoot, right? We take them hunting, right? Do hunting workshops. We go spelunking, they box, they canoe, they kayak, whitewater rafting. Lego robotics, chess, cheerleading, of course, martial arts, cooking classes. Anything they're interested in trying, we try to give them the opportunity to learn how to do it. And we do that for about 9 or 10 weeks over the summer, and we have a blast.
Wow. That I don't know how you do it. I don't know how you put all that together. Did you come up with the curriculum for that or the activities for that yourself, or was there other people involved in the development and the implementation of it?
So my mom actually came up with the curriculum for Camp Warrior King. The way that my mother, again, I grew up in a single parent home, and my mother was determined to get us out of the inner city. And the way that she did that, we're pretty much out of the hood. The way that she did that was she started a janitorial service. She started cleaning houses. And she, had a tough time with that, but she, clean houses, and that got us out. And then once we moved to the Atlanta area, she became an educator and she started teaching. And so she actually retired 30 years as an educator. Well, what she did, I told her, I said, Mom, we want to open up a summer camp. And, I said, we need you to do the curriculum. And
was she shocked that you decided that you were going to work with kids? Was she shocked about that?
I don't know if she was. I don't think I've ever asked her that question.
So she didn't know about your hatred of children then?
No, I didn't think that. Yeah, she didn't know about it. Yeah, she didn't know about it at all.
For people just joining us, that's a joke, okay? He doesn't hate children; he loves children. It's just the way that people are raised or whatever. Now, let me tell you this: you've spoken about the inner city and all that, and I grew up in. When I was coming up, you were talking about integration, school integration. And I had never seen a black person in my life until I went to junior high. And there was one school in our area, one, that allowed for black children to be integrated with white children. Okay, and they all came in a bus. They came in like a line of buses every morning. And that's the first time I ever saw a black child in my life. And I was absolutely terrified. And then I became extremely close, again, because of basketball, I became extremely close to a black kid. His name was Alfred. He doesn't mind if I use his name, I promise you. But anyway, we talked about this later, and he said, "Oh, you think you were scared? We were terrified." Anyway, so I can relate to what you're saying about the inner city, but if people will just leave people alone, kids are kids, and kids will integrate beautifully together. They will interact beautifully together. There's never going to be an issue if parents will just keep their nose out of it, if government will keep its nose out of it, if all these people will just keep their nose out of it and just let the children come together as children. I promise you, we'll be just fine. Now, that's my opinion. Maybe you have a different one, but, that's my opinion of it.
Well, no, I agree with your opinion 100%. And I tell you what, the next time you go to a playground, right, on a sunny day, when you're sitting there, take a look. And what you'll notice is that all the kids, right, no matter what color they are, they'll get on the playground and they'll make friends and they'll play and they'll run and they'll have a great time together on their own. Right. Now, that's the kids. Now, when you do that, at the same time, look around at the parents. The parents, they're all in their phones. They're not talking to each other, right? And no one's interacting like how the kids are. And so what that tells us is that stereotypes, hatred, any kind of preconceived notion, those are usually all learned behaviors. That kids are learning that at home, and they're learning it in their individual communities, and they're learning to distrust each other. But, man, when they get down on that playground, man, they'll have a ball, right? And so it is, what you said is 100% correct. It's letting the kids be kids, letting them, you'll find out for yourself a good person and a bad person. And it's like in every culture has them, right? There's great people in one culture and there's bad people in that culture. There's great people in another culture and bad people in there. It's more of, that person's, their heart and their character.
Yeah, it's not so much anything other than how children are raised, and I'm trying to come up with the right terminology here, but if parents are racist, on whether they're white, black, yellow, green, purple, okay, if you've got a racist parent, then chances are you're going to have a racist kid. But if a parent is inclusive, and please, for those listening to me, you know what I mean by inclusive. Don't draw the don't draw the wrong conclusion from that what I just said. But if you will just treat everybody as if they are a human being, as if they are God's child, if you will just raise them that way, they are going to get along with everybody else just fine. Don't teach them that because somebody is a certain color that they're bad people. That's all I got to say. Okay, Shaun, we've come to the end of the first part of the podcast, and we're going to be back here in just a couple of minutes with the second half of It Is Primetime Somewhere.
Attention podcasters, influencers, media personalities, content creators, and aspiring or existing radio personalities. KRRB Revelation Radio now offers the opportunity to broadcast or syndicate both new or existing shows to all 50 states and more than 160 countries around the world. And if you currently operate a radio station, we offer you the opportunity to add several popular shows in virtually every genre for broadcast on your station. Choose programming from 30 minutes to 2 hours, with each internationally syndicated show adding quality content sure to grow your listening audience. We even have excellent optional services to help you promote your show or station. These services are not only designed for audio use on the radio, but also include tools for use on social media, even YouTube. For more information, visit www.revelationradio.net or email the Ustream It LLC Broadcast Network at office@ustreamit.net today.
And welcome back, everybody, to the second half of It's Primetime Somewhere. Again, my name is J.D. Williams here in East Texas, and my guest today, Mr. Shaun Banks. And Shaun, I forgot, where are you exactly? I know you're not in Texas. Where are you located?
I'm in Atlanta, Georgia.
Atlanta, Georgia. Been there many times, worked for the airline industry. American, who I worked for, wasn't real big in Atlanta. Atlanta was dominated by Delta and I think Eastern at one time, but Delta for sure. But anyway, still had to go through Atlanta many times. It was at the time that I worked in the industry anyway, it was the biggest airport in the world. So anyway, all right. So getting back to you now, we've got another area to go into, and you are the developer and the creator, I love this name, Team Hot Sauce. Tell me about tell me about Team Hot Sauce, and you also, just for people who are listening to this, even though some people are seeing it in visual form, Shaun, but most people are just listening to it. Can you spell that as well on the Team Hot Sauce thing, because it's a little bit unique. Go ahead.
Right. So team, of course, TEAM, and hot sauce, HOTT, and sauce is SAWCE. Hot sauce. Yes,
Well, I'll tell you,
team
now,
hot sauce.
you mentioned that your mom was an educator for about 30 years. What I failed to tell you is my dad was a school teacher and principal for 49 years. So,
Oh, wow.
So the two of us can kind of relate to the fact that, you know,
Yeah.
when mom, in your case, dad, in my case, came home, their day wasn't over yet. They had a lot to do in their room, and you know, one thing that used to drive me absolutely crazy, because my dad was really popular in school. Everybody wanted to be in his class. We would go to the mall, or we could. I don't care where. I don't care where we went. It was like, Mr. Williams, Mr. Williams. You know, they come running over to him.
Yeah.
You know, well, that agitated me to death. I hated that, because they were taking time away from me and my dad. Okay, now I don't know what your experience was, if you had anything similar to that, but I can relate to the educator's kid thing. Trust me.
Yeah, man. I mean, well, you know, growing up, I mean, for me, it was, you know, there was just a big push for education at home, right? So, you know, my mom knew that there was going to be homework sent home. She knew that you had it. She knew when testing time was, you know, and she also knew when you weren't going to get a good grade. So, you know, there was no hiding.
Yeah. Well, you know, being a teacher's kid, it has its advantages, I guess, in some ways. But what you were just talking about there, that's what we, at the time anyway, considered to be a major disadvantage, right? Because because the other teachers would tell, you know, hey, you know, your son isn't doing this right here. You know, we need to get him. Oh, Lord. Okay, that's bringing back terrible memories. Let's move on. Okay, so anyway, tell me about this Team Hot Sauce. We just opened the door on it, so just tell me about it.
Got you. Team Hot Sauce are cartoon characters, and there's 9 of them, and they are pretty much characters designed to help kids get motivated and teach them personal development principles in a way that they can understand it. And so Team Hot Sauce are the garden guardians and vegetable defenders. And what they're doing is they're going all over the galaxy fighting against insects, because of course, you know, insects eat vegetables. And they're fighting against these you know, alien insects. And on the way, you know, they're teaching kids personal development principles, how to build their confidence, how to build their focus, you know, how to build their, you know, their tenacity and different things. And so I created Team Hot Sauce after my uncle. Uncle Hot is one of the main characters. And my Uncle Virgil, was a real inspiration in my life, where he was the first man that I saw that raised a family. My dad didn't. My dad wasn't home, and in my community there were a lot of kids like that who, you know, we just had a bunch of moms around, and there weren't a lot of dads. And my Uncle Virgil was an example for me. He's been married to my Aunt Charlotte now over 50 years, and you know, he was just a wonderful example of a man. And so when I said, okay, who can we create to be a character that I know actually has a lot of the characteristics that I would like to emulate, it was my Uncle Virgil. And so that's where Uncle Hot is. He's Uncle Hot, and he's this rich uncle, right, in the character, this rich uncle that's made money off of a hot sauce called the Love. And he has all of his nieces and nephews that are, you know, broccoli and karate, and they, you know, come to Uncle Hot and they go all over the galaxy doing cool stuff.
Oh, well, it's now. Listening to that, and the reason I hesitated there is because I also noticed that you're an author, and you've got 3 books that you have published. One
Yes.
is called Persevere, Outcome, Win, then Raising Extraordinary Kids, and then Be Unstoppable, Living Life. And as I said, the reason that I hesitated was, does the Team Hot Sauce, is that a part of any one of these books, or is that a completely
No.
separate thing?
That's something completely separate. So
Okay.
Team Hot Sauce it can be found in our youth magazine.
Okay.
We do the comics in the youth magazine. That's where you can find them.
Okay.
And that's where we started, that project with the comic. Also, we have T-shirts and shoelaces and stuff for kids,
Okay.
and hats like the one I have right here. That's actually for catch-up right there.
Okay.
But the books are completely separate. The books are designed primarily for parents.
Okay.
Persevere, Overcome, Win, and Raising Extraordinary Kids are two books that talk to parents about how to improve their child's performance. So I'm not one that really likes to talk to parents about parenting. I believe that a parent knows their child better than someone from the outside. But I do believe that there are principles that you can teach your child to get them to perform better. So, for example, I have a series in one of the books, Persevere, Overcome, Win, that's called The Confidence Castle, right? And it's steps to build your child's confidence. This is how you get your child from being timid to actually performing, right?
Okay.
Or, work ethic. This is how you can get your child to improve their work ethic. So it's strategies like that where they can use their own parenting things that are working and use the strategies that we're teaching, or that I'm teaching rather, and use it to help their child.
Okay. Well, you are diversified is the best way to say it. I mean, you've got a lot of things going on at the same time. I got a radio station I run. I got podcasts I do. I got a radio show I do with another guy. So I know a little bit about, having to break up your time and all that kind of stuff. But you got like 10 times what I got. So I don't understand. That's crazy. But I commend you for it, because you're obviously you got it going on there. But I want to back up a minute, get a little personal with you. And if you don't want to answer, don't worry. I can't reach you. You're in Atlanta. I'm in Texas. Okay, so I can't do a thing about it. So anyway, now you have said that you came up in the inner city. You called it the hood. Well, yeah, okay, I understand that. I grew up with that terminology. I told you, the people I grew up with, I came up with that terminology. I understand it completely.
Right.
But the influence that you went under as a youth, you could have very easily gone another direction, Shaun. I mean, you and I both know that. You could have very easily gone down a different path. Was it that uncle that you were speaking of? Was that, and I don't want to take away from your mother. I really don't. I mean, moms are important. They're extremely important. They're your rock. But at the same time, mom's not there all the time. Mom's not at school with you. Mom's not down at the rec center with you. I mean, that. So, was there somebody in your life, like your uncle or something, or what kept you on the straight and narrow? Bottom line, what kept you going?
Number one was God.
Amen. Amen.
Number one was God. Let's start there. What built my faith was the fact that I knew, especially as an adult, that it was God, that if it wasn't for God, I would have become a statistic like a lot of my friends, or dead or in jail.
Right.
And the number one reason is God. My mother put me in church as a kid, so I understood that there was a God and to have that belief. And it was God's protection primarily. And through that, God works through people. And so, my father, when he would, come in my life as a kid, he would instill some principles. There was a couple whoopings I got from my dad that definitely straightened me out. And then people like my Uncle Virgil, when I got to high school, a gentleman by the name of Dr. Moss was my high school forensics coach. I was on a debate team. And he was instrumental because, we were poor kids. We couldn't afford to go to these debate tournaments and, go to these different camps. And Dr. Moss would take a lot of times his own money and send us to these camps. And then it was just a community that started that I was around. So the Atlanta Urban Debate League is a huge program in the city of Atlanta. And if it wasn't for the Atlanta Urban Debate League and people like Melissa Wade and Kerry Crenshaw, who was a coach at the University of Alabama, I would have never had an opportunity to go to college. And I say that because, it's important that, like I said to you earlier, that there are good people in all cultures and bad people in all cultures. And I say this to make a point. Melissa Wade and Kerry Crenshaw were white, but Dr. Moss was black. Okay. Now, if it wasn't for all of them coming together and working, myself and one of my best friends, who's actually a pastor out in Dallas, Fort Worth, we wouldn't have had an opportunity to go to college, right? Because we didn't have the money. I mean, my mother told me, look, I don't have any money for you to go to college. You're going to have to get a scholarship. Right. And so it was people like that just were very influential. Aunts, of course, my Uncle Virgil. I have another character is Stinker, and we have one of our characters. His name is Coach Stinker. I have an uncle. My uncle's name is Stinker, and my uncle Stinker is my uncle Stinker is one of the people that taught me how to change a tire, right? How to change brakes on the car, right? So it's just a community of people, but the number one reason is that God's the head of my life, and that's who's been guiding me, and that's the reason why I'm able to do what I'm doing now.
Amen. Well, like I said, I think I mentioned this early on that Shaun and I had spoken for just a couple of minutes before the podcast started today, and we were talking about having him on the Last Christian podcast as well, another podcast that I do, and he's agreed to do that, and I'm looking forward to having him on because then we can really get in depth about what you were just talking about.
Yes.
Today we're going to stick with everything to do with your hatred of children. Okay. Today we are going to continue to talk about your marvelous work with kids, and that's really the best way to say it, is that you have graduated yourself from looking at children in one way to a completely different way that I think pleases the Lord that we serve very much. So I really want you to have the opportunity to speak as much about this as you can. And right now, what I want to do is I just kind of want to open it up to you for a minute and just say, okay, tell us about your overall, in general, what you're all about, what your organization is all about. Give us those things that are involved in this, where you see yourself right now, and then most importantly, where you see yourself going from this point forward. Take as much time as you want, Shaun. It's all yours.
Well, where I am right now is we're building the You Can Have It All magazine. You Can Have It All magazine is a motivational magazine designed to motivate children around the world to go after their dreams. My goal with that magazine is to have it in every country where there are children that will read it. It's a digital magazine. We also have physical copies available. But I believe that motivation is a universal language. So one kid in the UK wants to be motivated to go after their dreams just like a child in Taiwan. And our goal is to continue to motivate youth in that way because, we may not be able to speak to them all, but we can give them something that they can take a picture and put it on their wall and say, hey, look, that could get me through tomorrow. Or, a quote or affirmation. They can read an article about a cool kid doing something else, and that can motivate them. And so You Can Have It All, You Can Have It All magazine is where I am right now, and that's what's got me fired up about what I'm doing. And part of the proceeds from our magazine goes towards our orphanage, the You Can Have It All orphanage in Bombo, Uganda, East Africa.
I saw that. I was going to bring that one up. As a matter of fact, I'm glad you did, because it does say that a portion of all the proceeds from your business do maintain the You Can Have It All orphanage in Bombo, Uganda. And
Yes.
they currently support 30 children with shelter, food, and school supplies. That's not
Yes.
cheap. That is not cheap. I have a friend in Bungoma, Kenya. He's actually a host on one of my radio shows for Revelation Radio, and we will communicate as the two of us are doing right now. We have done several in the past, and he has a very difficult time connecting because because of the lack of what we here in the United States take for granted. Do you experience that type of thing with your work with your orphanage? There's just being able to stay in touch, just do the normal day to day.
The normal day to day, yeah, it's very challenging there compared to the United States. I mean, just one of the things that we do is to make sure that the children eat every day, right? And we have homelessness and we have hunger problems in the United States as well. But the difference between East Africa and the United States is that in the United States, there's more resources. So there are food banks, right? There's places where people can go eat. 9 times out of 10, a child, no one's going to let a child go hungry in the United States. But in Uganda, you see kids sleeping on the street. There's child homelessness, and which touched my heart because these are kids that are the same age as my children, right? Or the kids I work with at camp, and they're on the street sleeping in a box with no shoes on. And so the resources and the difference in resources is tremendous, and they do definitely have those issues, and so that's why it was on my heart to do something about it. Originally, the orphanage was being held up by a gentleman that was trying to do it on his own, and it was getting ready to fall apart, and so we went and did the conference and crusade. He said, man, if we can just get some help. And I said, we talked to him. I said, we're going to take this over so that we can continue to help these kids get an education, because they can't go to school. You can't even get a job, right? So, it helps them get schooling. We've been able to do some things on the orphanage. We're looking to be able to expand the orphanage so that they have a bigger one and can be more self-sufficient. But it's a lot of work. It definitely is.
Yeah, there are a lot of challenges going over that way. I know we had sent just some CDs to get a message across. We'd sent some CDs down to Kenya, and even though we paid for it, we paid for everything, okay? But as soon as it got to the post office in Kenya, and my friend went to go pick them up, then all of a sudden they want to be charged again. Even though we paid for everything supposedly, but whatever. Do you run into that too, where they're ripping you off on that end? Yes,
I've experienced that before. You'll experience. I've experienced situations where I've been bribed to be able to do certain things. It's like, wait a minute, we already paid for it,
right?
But since they have it's like someone who. It's like giving someone that doesn't have money a lot of power, right? And so this person may be a police officer or something, and they may not have a lot of money or any money at all, but they have the power and authority, and they'll see, they might even realize that you have, maybe 1 or 2 extra nickels than what they have, and they're like, well, hey, look, you got to pay us to be able to get this. So I've had it happen, but the majority of the people have been extremely helpful. And very gracious that were there. So, like I said, you got your good seeds and you got your rotten apples in every group.
Amen. Okay, I meant to bring this up real early on in the podcast, and for whatever reason didn't. What does FF stand for?
That's my name, Shaun.
SF. Okay, all right.
Well, the SF. The F stands for free, right? So Shaun's free.
Okay, and, all right. Okay,
Shaun's free.
That's what I was getting at, because I saw. I told you about my best friend. Okay. So my best friend, his name was Tyrone, but we just called him T. So I get the initial thing, I get that. And by the way, my name is Joel, but I just go by JD. It's just easier for people to remember. But when did you start because you said that your friends call you SF. So when did you start using that?
Well, some of let's see here, probably in my late 20s, when I started, really getting into personal development. And I said to a buddy of mine, I said, I think we'll start going by SF. And he said, SF. He said, man, what do you think you are, like a battleship or something? And so I laughed about it, and then I thought about it again, and I said, you know what? You're doggone right. That's exactly what I am. I am a battleship. So I think I'll keep it.
Okay.
And so I just started using it. So I mean, some people will say, "Hey SF," or some people will say, "Hey Shaun," whatever. Yeah.
Oh, that's really cool. So you've got all these different things going on here. The I Am Defense Institute, Camp Warrior King. You're the creator of Team Hot Sauce. You got 3 books.
Yes.
Shaun, I don't think you're doing enough. I really think that you ought to actually, you're gonna have to pick it up in the second half of your life here, okay? In all seriousness, you are doing the Lord's work. You're doing yeoman's work as far as helping these kids. You know what it's like to live in less than perfect situation, okay?
Absolutely.
And I'm sure you can draw a lot from your personal experience on that and how you guide kids, and that's great. Mm-hmm. Do you see yourself doing this same thing for the next 5-10 years, or do you have something else in mind? Is there going to be another level to what you're doing?
I see myself doing this and expanding this.
Okay.
It's definitely a life's work,
right?
And the need won't go away, and there's always going to be a need that if we can be able to, if there's a kid that could be able to get this motivation in some kind of way, that we got to continue to do it. And I actually love what I do now. Like I said, I had zero passion to do this. Someone would have told me at 21 that I would be working with youth. I probably would have had some choice words for them. But no, I mean, there's work to do, right? We got to expand this magazine and, get it to, as many countries around the world where people want to read it. And that's going to take time. And then even once we get it there, we got to get it better, and that's going to take time. Yeah. So, this is what I want to do.
Yeah. The one thing that I do know is once you get into something and it becomes your passion, it does truly become your passion, and it's something that you work on every single day, and you want to make it better and better and better and better. And just looking at your resume, for lack of a better word here, it is a good one.
Thank you.
The website, I only was able to spend a couple of minutes on it this morning, but I did look around it a little bit, and it looks like it's very well put together. I noticed also you got some YouTube videos that you list.
Yes.
Yes. Are you doing a lot of work with YouTube? I mean, I've personally have run into a lot of problems with them because they don't like the fact that we don't follow the
right.
The line for we don't adhere to that, and they don't like it. So a lot of times they call us hate speech because we do include a lot of Bible stuff, and they consider that hate. So I've run into problems with that. Have you run into similar problems with that, or are you just still developing it, or where are you as far as social media, specifically YouTube, Facebook, that type of thing?
I use social media to advertise, but as far as my content, I want it on my page, right, on my own stuff.
Right.
I found that that's the better way to do it. For me, it just allows, because with social media, so much is changing so fast,
right,
that it's kind of hard to keep up with what they're doing. And a lot of the stuff that's on social media, I don't jam with, man. I mean, it's a lot going on. I think that in particular for our country and just what's happening around the world, there's a lot that could be done to protect the youth from what they're seeing. And I don't think that that's regulated. And so that makes it very difficult for us to do our job out here because, for example, at our camp, I mean, we have to tell kids they can't bring their phones and that they have to keep them up because they're distracted. They're so distracted with just being in their phone. So, I mean, the weirdest thing is to come into to do a van ride or be in a room full of kids and it's completely silent. Right. It should never be that way. But now it's completely silent because they're sitting right next to each other, but they're not talking to each other. They're looking in their phone. They're texting each other.
Right.
And it's
I've seen that.
Yeah. And COVID made it worse because there was no socialization. So that was the only way they could connect.
Right.
And so now a kid, you'll see a kid and they're more comfortable texting a friend than just talking to a friend.
Right. And that's really sad. Yeah. It really is, but it is truly the way it goes. All right, Shaun, we got 30 seconds. So anything anything else that you would like to for the world to know, here's your chance right now.
Go to GoSFB.com, learn more about what I'm doing, and I would love to be able to connect with you on future projects, ideas, podcast shows, anything. Let's do it. We can get this word out about developing youth around the world.
Amen. Well, again, my guest today, Mr. Shaun Banks, and we've got the web address up there for you. Either that, or you'll find it in the comments section. So please do visit him. He's got a lot of worthwhile endeavors going on. Shaun, I really appreciate you, sir, taking the time today to join me on It's Prime Time Somewhere. And I look forward to having you on the Last Christian podcast. I think that you've got a lot to mention. I know that you say that God is a big part of your life, and He's obviously a big part of my life with Revelation Radio, with the Last Christian podcast and radio show. So I'm looking forward to getting you on. And Shaun, again, thank you so much for being with me today.
Thank you so much, JD. I appreciate it.
God bless.